The applause echoed through the conference room like gunshots. Frank Dalton stood at the head of the mahogany table, beaming with fatherly pride as he announced the promotion I'd worked 3 years to earn. Please join me in congratulating our new senior project manager, Brielle Dalton. My chest burned. The promotion letter had been sitting in my drafts folder for weeks, waiting for Frank's signature. Now his 26-year-old daughter was standing in my place, accepting handshakes from colleagues who knew this was wrong. Brielle caught my eye across the room and smiled sweetly. Don't worry, Erin. You'll still have a place here. I forced my mouth into what I hoped looked like a smile. My hands trembled under the conference table as I clapped along with everyone else. Inside, my mind was already calculating, planning, organizing. She's right, I thought, watching Brielle pose for photos with her new nameplate. I will have a place here. Just not the way she expects. The meeting dissolved into congratulations and small talk. I sat frozen in my chair, watching my future get handed to someone who'd never earned it. The walk back to my office felt like a funeral march. Colleagues I'd worked with for years avoided eye contact or offered pitying smiles. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like angry insects. My coworker Marcus whispered as I passed his desk, "I thought that was your job." "So did I replied softly, my voice barely audible above the office chatter. Behind me, I could hear Brielle laughing with the accounting team, already planning changes to systems I'd spent months perfecting. Her voice carried that confidence only money and connections could buy. I reached my office and closed the door, leaning against the glass wall. My reflection stared back at me, pale, shocked, defeated. The promotion announcement email was already in my inbox, CC'd to the entire company. Effective immediately, Brielle Dalton will assume all senior project manager responsibilities previously handled by our operations team. I deleted the email and sat in my chair, staring at the computer screen. I've just been erased, I whispered to the empty room. But erasure works both ways. If they could make me invisible, I could use that invisibility against them. My name is Erin Calloway. I'm 32 years old, and until this morning, I was the unofficial senior project manager of Brookstone Marketing Group. For 3 years, I'd been doing the job without the title or the salary. I started here as a junior analyst, working late nights and weekends while my classmates partied. I survived on coffee and determination, building client relationships from scratch and turning failing campaigns into success stories. Frank used to call me his secret weapon. He'd lean on my expertise during client meetings, then take credit for my ideas afterward. I told myself it was paying my dues, that hard work would eventually be rewarded. I created the client retention system that saved Brookstone $2 million last year. I developed the project tracking software that increased our efficiency by 40%. I built this place into something worth working for. My father died when I was 15, leaving me and Mom to figure out life alone. He taught me that respect was earned through competence, not inherited through blood. I built this place, I said to my reflection in the computer screen. I won't let it break me. Brielle held her first team meeting in the conference room that should have been mine. She used my slides, mispronounced strategic as strategic, and assigned me to assist her during the transition period. I sat in the back row, taking notes on my own presentation while she fumbled through concepts I'd developed over months of research. She wore a designer suit that cost more than my monthly rent and spoke with the authority of someone who'd never been told no. We're going to revolutionize how Brookstone approaches client engagement, she announced, reading directly from my PowerPoint. Moving forward, all project initiatives will go through enhanced optimization protocols. She had no idea what those words meant. I'd written them to impress Frank during budget meetings, but Brielle delivered them like lines from a play she'd never rehearsed. My teammate Kevin raised his hand. What exactly are enhanced optimization protocols? Brielle blinked twice, then looked at me. Erin, would you like to explain that to the team? I forced a smile and explained my own system while she nodded like she understood. She's standing in my place, holding everything I earned, I thought. And she doesn't even know how to hold it. Frank beamed with pride as Brielle bungled a major client call with Anderson Industries. I watched from my desk as she promised deliverables we couldn't possibly meet and quoted prices that would lose us money. "We can definitely have your campaign materials ready by next Tuesday," she said confidently into the speakerphone. Next Tuesday was impossible. The creative team needed at least 2 weeks for a project that size. I'd tried to explain this during our pre-call meeting, but Brielle had waved me off. "I've got this, Erin. Trust me." When Anderson's marketing director started asking technical questions about brand integration strategies, Brielle's confidence cracked. She looked at me desperately. I quietly stepped into the conversation, explaining our process and walking back her unrealistic promises. By the end of the call, I'd salvaged the relationship and negotiated a realistic timeline. Frank burst into the conference room afterward, grinning. "Brielle, that was fantastic. You handled that like a pro." She smiled and accepted his praise while I gathered my notes silently. The only thing worse than incompetence, I thought, watching them celebrate, is arrogance with a safety net. The breaking point came when Kevin mentioned Frank's explanation for my missed promotion. "He told the department you weren't ready for leadership," Kevin whispered during lunch. "Said you needed more seasoning. 3 years of carrying this company on my back. 3 years of solving problems before Frank even knew they existed. 3 years of making him look good to clients and board members. Not ready for leadership." That night, I sat alone in the office after everyone had gone home. The building was quiet except for the humming computers and distant traffic. I pulled up my old promotion email draft and stared at it for 10 minutes. Then I deleted it. I opened a new folder on my desktop and labeled it Blueprint. Inside, I created a document titled Project Exposure. If Frank wanted Brielle to lead, I'd make sure the world saw exactly what her leadership looked like. I started typing, documenting every system I'd built, every process I'd created, every safety net I'd installed to protect this company from failure. If they want her to lead, I whispered to the empty office, I'll make sure everyone sees what that really looks like. I stopped saving her. That was my first move, simple, elegant, invisible. When Brielle forgot about the Morrison deadline, I let her forget. When she scheduled 3 client meetings for the same time slot, I stayed silent. When she promised a complete rebranding package in half the time it actually required, I simply took notes. The soft sabotage felt strange at first. For 3 years, I'd been the safety net that caught every falling project. I'd worked weekends to fix other people's mistakes and stayed late to prevent disasters no one else saw coming. Now I sat at my desk, responding to emails and updating spreadsheets while watching Brielle dig her own holes. "Is everything okay with the Henderson project?" Marcus asked during our weekly team meeting. Brielle shuffled through papers frantically. "Everything's under control," she said, but her voice had a slight edge. I knew the Henderson project was 3 days behind schedule because she'd forgotten to approve the creative brief. I also knew she'd promised them a presentation tomorrow that didn't exist yet. Colleagues started murmuring quietly. "Is Brielle okay?" The truth doesn't need help, I thought, watching her scramble. It just needs space to breathe. The cracks formed faster than I'd expected. Clients started complaining about missed deadlines and confusing project updates. The creative team worked overtime trying to meet impossible promises Brielle had made without consulting anyone. During the Monday morning staff meeting, Brielle's frustration boiled over. "The team isn't supporting my vision," she announced, glaring around the conference room. "I need everyone to step up and take ownership." She blamed Marcus for communication issues she'd created. She criticized the design team for delays caused by her constantly changing requirements. She even suggested the accounting department was being obstructionist about budget approvals. I listened in silence while she took what Frank would later call temporary leave of reality. Her voice grew higher with each accusation. Her hands gestured wildly as she defended decisions that made no logical sense. Frank watched from the corner, his expression shifting from supportive to concerned to slightly embarrassed. "We need to work as a unit," Brielle continued, her voice cracking slightly. I can't succeed if you're all working against me. The room fell silent. Nobody made eye contact. People like her crumble when no one's holding them up, I thought, watching her confidence evaporate in real time. Frank gave Brielle her big moment the following week, a $1 million pitch with Meridian Corp., our largest potential client. The presentation would showcase Brookstone's capabilities and could secure our biggest contract ever. This is your chance to shine, Frank told her during the pre-meeting briefing. Show them what Dalton leadership looks like. He turned to me with a dismissive wave. Erin, I want you to stay out of the way for this one. Let Brielle handle it independently. I nodded politely. Of course, Frank. Whatever you think is best. Brielle spent the weekend preparing, using slides I'd created months earlier for a different client. She changed the colors and rearranged some text, but the foundation was still my work, she just didn't understand the reasoning behind any of it. I offered to review her presentation Friday afternoon. Thanks, but I've got this covered, she said confidently. I want to show Dad what I can do on my own. Absolutely, I replied. I'm sure it'll be memorable. That night, I cleaned my desk and organized my files. Tomorrow would be interesting. Let's see how the Dalton spark burns, I whispered to my empty office. The Meridian pitch was a spectacular disaster. I watched from the back row of the conference room as Brielle's presentation froze mid-slide, revealing numbers that didn't add up and timelines that defied physics. Our Q3 conversion rates show a 150% increase in customer satisfaction, she read confidently, unaware that the chart behind her showed a 15% decrease. Meridian's marketing director, a sharp woman named Victoria Reeves, raised her eyebrow. Those numbers seem inconsistent with your previous slide. Brielle clicked frantically through her presentation, clearly lost. I can explain that. But she couldn't explain it because she didn't understand it. I'd built those slides to tell a specific story, with each data point supporting the next. Brielle had rearranged them randomly, creating a narrative that contradicted itself every few minutes. Frank tried to jump in and save the presentation, but Victoria was already closing her portfolio. I think we've seen enough, she said politely but firmly. The room emptied quickly, leaving Frank, Brielle, and me sitting in uncomfortable silence. That was the first time she looked scared, I noted, watching Brielle's confident mask finally slip away. Back at the office, Brielle slammed her office door so hard that pictures rattled on nearby walls. Through the glass, I could see her pacing frantically, her phone pressed to her ear. 5 minutes later, Frank stormed into my workspace. His face was red, his tie slightly askew, and his usual composure had completely vanished. Why didn't you help her? He demanded, standing over my desk like an angry parent. I looked up calmly from my computer screen. You told me to stay out of the way. You know what I meant. You could have said something when you saw her struggling. You specifically said you wanted her to handle it independently. I was following your instructions. Frank opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. His own words hung in the air between us like a trap he'd built for himself. You could have, she needed. He started, then trailed off. I waited patiently for him to finish his thought, my expression neutral and professional. The silence stretched between us, filled only by the humming air conditioning and distant keyboard clicking. He finally turned and walked away without another word, leaving his defeat hanging in the air like expensive cologne. The office began turning within days. It started with sideways glances and whispered conversations that stopped when Brielle entered rooms. By Thursday, someone had left a handwritten note on my desk. She's drowning. Everyone knows you were the real boss. I smiled for the first time in weeks, carefully folding the note and tucking it into my desk drawer. Similar messages appeared over the following days. Some anonymous, others signed by colleagues who'd grown tired of pretending Brielle's leadership made sense. Marcus stopped by my desk Friday afternoon with coffee and gossip. Henderson called Frank directly, he whispered. They want to know if you're still handling their account. What did Frank tell them? That Brielle was fully capable of managing all client relationships. Marcus rolled his eyes. Henderson asked for your direct number anyway. The whisper network was powerful at Brookstone. Information flowed through unofficial channels faster than company memos. By Friday evening, everyone knew about the Meridian disaster and Henderson's concerns. Respect doesn't vanish, I thought, reading another supportive message from the graphic design team. It just waits for the right moment to return. Finance flagged major inconsistencies in Brielle's project budgets during the monthly review. She'd been approving expenses without understanding cost implications, creating a paper trail of financial confusion that made the accounting department nervous. These numbers don't make sense, Caroline from finance told Frank during their emergency meeting. She approved a $50,000 creative budget for a $30,000 project. I happened to be updating quarterly reports nearby and couldn't help overhearing their conversation. Frank's voice carried through his thin office walls as he demanded explanations Brielle couldn't provide. It's a strategic investment in client satisfaction, I heard her say, using buzzwords that meant nothing. Strategic investment in what? Frank asked. The project fee barely covers our costs. 20 minutes later, Frank emerged from his office looking like he'd aged 5 years in one conversation. He walked past my desk without acknowledgement, heading toward the accounting department with a stack of papers. I already knew where the numbers went wrong. I'd seen Brielle approve invoices she'd never read. But I kept my mouth shut and continued typing. She wanted control, I thought, watching Frank disappear around the corner. Now she's holding all the blame that comes with it. Brielle's public meltdown happened during Tuesday's team meeting. The pressure of constant mistakes and mounting criticism had finally cracked her professional facade. I need more support from this team, she announced, her voice shaky with barely controlled anger. Specifically from people who are supposed to be helping me succeed. Her eyes locked on mine across the conference table. Erin, I feel like you're not fully committed to making this transition work. You sit there silently while I'm trying to lead these meetings. The room fell silent except for the air conditioning and someone's nervous pen clicking. 8 pairs of eyes watched me carefully, waiting for my response. I looked at her calmly, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. What would you like me to say, Brielle? You could offer suggestions. Share your expertise. Actually participate instead of just taking notes. You told me last week that you wanted to establish your own leadership style without interference. Her face flushed. That doesn't mean you should just sit there like a statue. I continued staring at her evenly until she turned away, her confidence crumbling under the weight of her own contradictions. You can't lead people you've never respected, I thought, watching everyone's eyes follow her as she stormed out. The corporate board called an urgent performance review for the following Thursday. Frank spent 3 days trying to spin Brielle's catastrophic metrics into acceptable explanations. It's just a learning curve, he insisted during a pre-meeting phone call I accidentally overheard. She needs time to adjust to the increased responsibilities. Diana Shaw, the lead board member, wasn't buying it. Frank, we're not running a leadership development program. We're running a business. Brielle's 3-month performance data painted a stark picture. Client complaints up 300%, project delays at an all-time high, budget overruns in 6 different accounts, and staff satisfaction surveys that mentioned management confusion 17 times. Frank tried scheduling the review without me, but Diana specifically requested my presence. We need someone who understands the operational details, she explained. Thursday morning arrived gray and rainy, matching the mood in Brookstone's executive conference room. Board members filed in with serious expressions and thick folders. Erin will be sitting in on this review as an observer, Diana announced, gesturing toward my chair. She may have insights into recent operational challenges. Frank's jaw tightened, but he nodded politely. Brielle looked pale and underprepared. Let's begin, Diana said, opening her folder. The boardroom tension was electric. 5 board members sat around the polished table with laptops open and serious expressions. Brielle shuffled through note cards nervously while Frank checked his phone compulsively. Walk us through the Meridian presentation, Diana said without preamble. What went wrong? Brielle launched into excuses about technical difficulties and unrealistic client expectations. Frank interrupted twice to defend her decisions. I sat silently, observing the growing frustration around the table. The slides malfunctioned, Brielle explained. The data wasn't displaying correctly. Board member Thomas Chin pulled out his tablet. We have a copy of your presentation here. The slides worked fine, the data just didn't support your conclusions. Brielle's confidence evaporated as Thomas walked through each inconsistency in her pitch. Wrong numbers, contradictory charts, impossible timelines presented as achievable goals. Diana turned to me. Erin, if you were in her position, what would you have done differently? The room went completely silent. Frank leaned forward, warning me with his eyes. Brielle held her breath. I would have prepared, I said simply. The entire table went still. Those 4 words carried more weight than any detailed criticism. Frank cornered me in the hallway after the board meeting, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. You set her up to fail, he accused, backing me against the wall near the copy machine. How exactly did I do that? You knew she wasn't ready for Meridian. You could have helped her prepare properly. I looked him directly in the eye, my voice calm and steady. She told me she had it covered. She specifically said she wanted to show you what she could do independently. You know what I meant, he sputtered. No, Frank. I know what you said. You can't blame me for following your daughter's direct instructions and your own explicit orders. His face went from red to purple. You've been sabotaging her since day one. Have I? Because from where I stand, I've been doing exactly what you both asked me to do, stay out of her way and let her lead. Frank stepped closer, lowering his voice to a threatening whisper. You'll regret this, Erin. I'll make sure of it. No one can fail someone who earned their position, I replied evenly. But nepotism creates its own consequences. He turned and walked away, muttering threats under his breath. But his threats felt hollow now, like noise from a machine that had already broken down. The firm lost 2 major clients within the following week. Henderson Industries pulled their annual contract, citing communication issues and unmet deadlines. Morrison Creative moved their business to our biggest competitor after Brielle missed 3 consecutive project milestones. The whispers became open conversations. Brookstone sinking, people said in elevators and coffee shops. Industry contacts started calling me directly, asking if I was looking for new opportunities. Brielle called in sick on Wednesday and Thursday, leaving the remaining projects in complete chaos. I watched Frank sit alone in the conference room during lunch, staring at financial reports with hollow eyes and a loosened tie. The board's asking questions I can't answer, he confessed to Caroline from accounting, not knowing I was within earshot. They want explanations for client defections I don't understand. Caroline's response was gentle but honest. Maybe you should ask the person who does understand them. Frank's pride wouldn't let him admit the obvious solution. He'd rather watch his company crumble than acknowledge that promoting his daughter had been a mistake. I organized the remaining projects carefully, creating detailed transition documents for whoever would eventually clean up this mess. Diana Shaw called me privately that Friday afternoon. We're restructuring, she said without preamble. Frank's being moved to an advisory role. We'd like you to step in temporarily as senior project manager. I considered the offer carefully. Temporarily meant they wanted me to fix everything Brielle had broken, then step aside when they found someone more suitable for permanent leadership. Temporarily isn't my goal, I replied politely. Diana was quiet for a moment. What is your goal, Erin? Building something sustainable. Leading a team that respects competence over connections. Creating value instead of just preventing disasters. That sounds like you want your own company. Maybe I do. Diana chuckled softly. Then maybe it's time you built one. You'd have my endorsement and probably several client referrals. After hanging up, I sat in my office staring out the window at the city below. People walked purposefully along sidewalks, building careers and chasing dreams. How many of them were settling for less than they deserved? I opened my laptop and created a new document titled Helix Strategy Group Business Plan. Brielle returned Monday morning pretending confidence, but the staff no longer listened to her announcements. During the team meeting, people checked their phones and whispered among themselves while she outlined new efficiency initiatives. We need to rebuild client trust through enhanced engagement protocols, she read from notes that sounded like corporate Mad Libs. Kevin raised his hand. What specific protocols are we implementing? Brielle blinked twice. Erin will distribute the details later. But I wouldn't be distributing anything. Frank's credibility was gone, destroyed by months of defending the indefensible. Brielle's authority existed only on paper. In practice, she was a figurehead without followers. I helped the team finish one last project, the Williams Industries campaign we'd been developing for months. I worked late 3 nights running, ensuring every detail was perfect. On Thursday morning, I delivered the completed campaign materials to Williams' office personally. Their marketing director was impressed with the quality and attention to detail. This is exactly what we hoped for, she said, reviewing the presentation. Is there any chance you'd be interested in freelance work? While Brielle held meaningless meetings about efficiency protocols, I quietly packed my desk. Personal photos, reference books, the coffee mug my team had given me last Christmas. I submitted my resignation letter Friday at 4:47 p.m., timing it to arrive in Frank's inbox just before the weekend. 2 weeks' notice, professional courtesy despite everything that had happened. Frank called after me as I waited for the elevator. Erin, wait. We need to talk about this. His voice carried a desperation I'd never heard before. The confident CEO who'd dismissed my expertise 6 months ago now sounded like a man watching his empire crumble. I turned to face him one last time. There's nothing to discuss, Frank. I'm pursuing other opportunities. You can't just walk away from everything we've built here. I'm not walking away from what we built. I'm walking away from what you destroyed. The elevator doors opened with a soft ding. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the ground floor. Erin, please. Be reasonable. I looked at him standing in the hallway, expensive suit wrinkled, hair disheveled, empire collapsing around him because he'd chosen blood over merit. Watch me, I said quietly as the doors closed on his reflection. The elevator descended smoothly toward the lobby, carrying me away from 3 years of undervaluation and toward something I'd built for myself. I rented a small office downtown with a cheap desk, 2 mismatched chairs, and a whiteboard that had seen better days. The space smelled like fresh paint and possibility. On the whiteboard, I wrote Helix Strategy Group in blue marker, then stepped back to admire my modest beginning. No corporate politics. No nepotism. No credit stolen by people who'd never earned it. My first client email arrived Tuesday morning. Ms. Calloway, we've been following your work at Brookstone. Williams Industries would like to discuss a consulting arrangement. Within a week, I had 3 potential clients and a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. Word spread quickly through professional networks about a former Brookstone manager who actually delivered results. Henderson Industries called personally. We heard you left Brookstone, their project director said. Would you be interested in handling our account independently? I scheduled meetings for the following week, working from my small office with determination that felt familiar and exciting. This was what building something real felt like. Let's begin again, I whispered to my reflection in the office window, watching the city move below me like a machine I was finally ready to understand. Helix Strategy Group gained momentum faster than I'd expected. Within 2 months, I'd signed 4 major clients and hired 3 employees, all former Brookstone staff who'd grown tired of Frank's leadership style. Marcus joined first, followed by 2 designers from the creative team. They brought skills, enthusiasm, and insider knowledge about client preferences Brookstone had never properly understood. The breakthrough came when Morrison Creative decided to move their account from Brookstone to Helix. We want to work with people who actually understand our business, their CEO explained during our initial meeting. Local business magazines started calling for interviews about the marketing revolution happening in our small downtown office. I declined most requests, preferring to focus on building sustainable client relationships. Friday afternoon, Marcus burst into my office with a newspaper. "You need to see this," he said, pointing to the business section headline, "Helix Strategy Lands Brookstone's Largest Account." I read the article twice, savoring every word about Morrison's decision to leave their former agency for more competent leadership and innovative thinking. Somewhere across town, Frank was probably reading the same article and finally understanding the true cost of nepotism. Frank resigned quietly 3 months later. The board announcement cited new opportunities and strategic transitions, but everyone knew the truth. Brielle left the marketing industry entirely, moving to California to pursue what her LinkedIn profile called wellness consulting. Brookstone Marketing Group was sold off in pieces over the following year. Their client list, office equipment, and intellectual property divided among competitors who could actually manage them effectively. A business journalist called asking for my comments about Brookstone's collapse. "No comment on specific companies," I said diplomatically. But competence speaks louder than connections. The interview ran in next month's industry magazine alongside my photo and a feature about Helix Strategy Group's rapid growth. "Building Success Through Merit" was the headline. I framed the article and hung it in our expanded office space, right next to the original whiteboard where I'd written our company name 6 months earlier. That afternoon, I walked out into downtown sunlight feeling lighter than I had in years. No more corporate politics. No more stolen credit. No more apologizing for excellence. Just the satisfaction of building something real through honest work and genuine competence. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office reviewing quarterly reports that showed Helix Strategy Group's continued growth. We'd moved to a larger space, hired 8 employees, and signed 12 major clients. I didn't destroy Frank and Brielle, I just stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own choices. Some lessons can't be taught through words or warnings. They have to be lived, experienced, and paid for. When people choose nepotism over merit, they eventually choke on the results. Frank thought family connections could replace professional competence. Brielle believed inherited authority commanded automatic respect. They were both wrong. I poured myself a cup of coffee and glanced around the bustling office. Marcus was presenting campaign ideas to a new client. Our design team collaborated on creative concepts that would actually work. Everyone here had earned their position through talent and dedication. I didn't get the promotion I deserved, I reflected, watching my team build something meaningful together. I got the freedom I earned. The Helix Strategy logo gleamed on our conference room door, reflecting afternoon sunlight like a promise kept. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let other people's small vision define your potential. I smiled and returned to work, building the company Frank never could have imagined.